The essay. One phrase, 2 words, 8 letters, 150 students recoiling in horror. Upon hearing it, students start wondering if ChatGPT is advanced enough to answer the essay's prompt with nuance, wondering if Snowden can swap the syntax in a clever enough manner to avoid Turnitin's check, wondering if any benefit for future moments even exists in completing this labor. These wonderings all make me so sad. It makes me sad because we should embrace the essay, for everything is an essay. Essays are everything. They are the text messages created for our crushes that we draft, delete, recover, edit, delete, send, immediately put our phones on airplane mode to stop the send, then finally delete forever. They are the cover letters submitted to our dream jobs, prostrating ourselves for the opportunity to be a part of that place. They are the eulogies presented to our people, supplying solace to the agony and unfairness of life's taking of our loves. All of these, regardless of the medium in which they are delivered, are essays, and represent our most intimate and important engagements with the world. Believe me when I promise that to create, analyze, or improve at one is to improve at them all. We need to shift the way in which we engage with essays so that we can become better prepared for those sensitive, pivotal moments of the real world. We must be ready because ChatGPT does not have access to the specific details of our crush's quirks or the clumsy occurrences of those first dates. Yet. And Snowden cannot rearrange texts to fit our styles, our voices, and our personalities in a way that is anything more than a lifeless husk, undesired in any workplace. And moments cannot be deferred, for somebody has to carry the burden of hard times and provide meaning to all of this and help people move forward. So why not be prepared for these things? Why not prepare when the preparation comes simply in the form of 2 essay tenets that are merely shifts in mindset? The first tenet is this: word count does not equal quality. Word counts exist not because that range of words equals perfection, so we should mindlessly charge towards it. Word counts exist because they create quantified battlefields where varied skills from a student's arsenal have to be used. The longer the word count, the more skills required. So mindless movers and wielders of few literary weapons will fall to the traps of monotony and incoherence. Tenet 2 is this: the process matters, not the product. The process mattering is evidenced by any world champion. The product of having been at practice is accomplished by millions in any sport. But it is not merely showing up to practice that creates champions. It is the deliberate doing and the meticulous mindfulness that is done by only some at practice that separates the champions from the chumps who think it's enough to just show up. These tenets take form in any essay, regardless of the essay's nature, be it the creation of a work or the analysis of a work. If we are creating, we dwell on each added feature to ensure it drives our readers to our purpose. If we are analyzing, we dwell on each presented feature to understand how it drives us to the author's purpose. What I mean by feature is myriad. Letters sound, words definition, phrases function, clauses order, punctuations parsing, italics or bolds accentuation, pictures or charts synthesis, subheadings separation, text structures presentation, literally anything that constitutes the essay. A good essay commands a variety of features to bolster its purpose. And as we examine how features coalesce to accomplish the purpose in the writings of others, we can apply those same features to accomplish our purposes in our writings. Features can be grouped into 3 very flexible categories: form, structure, and language. Form is the genre or physical medium that supplies the bounds inside which the author works to accomplish the purpose for the audience. Structure is the schematic of the internal components that organize the ideas. Language is the choice of words, phrases, and clauses for the nuanced function that they have in English. If we were to analogize this to the building of homes, we can appreciate the categories a bit more. The form in house building could be considered something like the genre of a Florida home. This genre demands that basements do not exist, but it makes no claim on the number of floors. Number of floors and the function of each floor can be considered the structure of building homes. And the language of building homes is the choice of wood or tile that constitutes those floors. It is evident that these categories are inextricably linked. So linked are they that things can get very confusing. For instance, while our choice of flooring is either wood or tile, and that's language, if we want to consider a wood frame for the house versus a concrete frame for the house, we might intuitively guess this is a matter of structure. But it is actually the genre of our Florida home that would inform us that hurricanes favor wood's fragility and guide us towards concrete. With the grounding of these categories in the familiar grounds of home, we can hopefully now appreciate these categories in the unfamiliar territory of writing. Let's talk the pronoun I as it relates to the categories of form, structure, and language. If we see this pronoun in a text and choose to comment on it being a signal for the genre of an autobiography, that would be form. If we choose to comment on how the author's shift from I to you between paragraphs is to clearly organize and define whose responsibility is whose, that would be structure. If we choose to comment on I's transcendent, immersive effects, that would be language. Another one. Let's talk the compound complex sentence as it relates to the categories of form, structure, and language. If we see a compound complex sentence in a text and choose to comment on its conceptually dense construction being fitting for an academic article with a studied and driven audience who will work to unpack it, that would be form. If we see a compound complex sentence and choose to comment on how it follows a main idea focused four-word sentence and takes that four-word sentence and complementizes it as a subject so that the compound complex sentence can highlight and expand on a main idea, that would be structure. If we see a compound complex sentence and comment on its subordinating clause's existence as a simile that compares a girl to a rose in order to highlight fragile beauty, that would be language and cliche, and not as effective as using Bailey as the archetype for beauty. A final one. Boom! Let's talk the onomatopoeia as it relates to the categories of form, structure, and language. If we see an onomatopoeia in a text and choose to comment on how it serves as a traditional hook, which is an expected feature of the online article that it heads, and how the device's playful nature is a fitting choice for its youthful audience, that would be form. If we choose to comment on how an onomatopoeia stands alone in a paragraph to signal a shift in setting as the character falls through the floor and into a new area, that would be structure. If we choose to comment on the onomatopoeia's capturing of a unique sound as the final sense needed to completely round out the description of an environment, that would be language. The three writing examples of features and categories serve to demonstrate the flexibility of categories. This flexibility exists and, as mentioned, can be confusing, but it should never be debilitating. I present the categories because we need to keep them in mind to ensure that we're approaching analysis or the creation of a text with diverse lenses. Quality commentaries address all categories, and quality creative pieces evoke all categories. No one would ever judge us for labeling the category of a feature incorrectly, so we will not worry about it too much. What we will worry about a bunch is justifying the effects of a feature on the author's purpose. Now, we don't even really need to do that correctly. We just need to do it, but more on that later. Now we will discuss the heart of the AICE Lang AS level test, the commentary. A commentary is synonymous with an analysis, BT dubs. The commentary in 3 different sections between paper 1 and paper 2 can net us a total of 50 possible points. Moreover, the cool features we comment on will be adapted as part of our own styles for the other sections. A commentary is an essay whose purpose is explaining the choices of the author. The choices should always be framed through a discussion of how the author accomplishes a purpose while appealing to the specific audience. Audience is the easiest to explain. A work, especially a nonfiction work like a movie review, is not for everyone. A specific subcategory of the population, be it an angry bocce ball player or an uneducated person with a fascination for circuitry, is being appealed to with specific choices. And our responsibility is to find and explain those choices and how they appeal to the specific audience. The appealing is done to accomplish the purpose. An author's purpose, regardless of intent, can have two layers. One layer is always present, and it is at the surface level of content, which readers arrive at merely by reading and understanding. The other layer is sometimes present, and it is in a deeper level, taking form as a statement about society, which readers uncover by contextualizing, inferring, or abstracting. Even though this deeper level is most often found in a work of fiction, like a novel, any genre can have a deeper purpose. For example, a nonfiction text could be an online review about a specific cell phone, and the surface level purpose could be convincing the broke and youthful readers to stay away from the new iPhone and instead go to Galaxy. But there could be a deeper purpose within the text that highlights the issues with society's homogenization of technology and the death of innovation, which might only be revealed in seemingly throwaway lines or words with accessory connotations. While an audience has to be present, unless it's like one of those trees toppled in an empty forest, that second layer does not have to be there. But we should be paranoid as we read anything that we might be missing a deeper meaning. This paranoia will help us develop strong close reading skills. I care about close reading skills because that is what will empower us in the real world. This desire for close reading skills is why the approach to our creation for commentaries is going to be unorthodox. We are going to create our commentaries in sequential order as features are presented to us, and we are going to create them without reading any more than however far we've read. To be clear, we do not read the entire text and start planning an essay, as is the traditional process. We dig into the first sentence and create a comment to the best of our abilities given what is known and what can be assumed. Then, we read the second sentence and create a comment to the best of our abilities, given what is known and what can be assumed. Then we read the third sentence and create a comment to the best of our abilities, given what is known and what can be assumed. Then, so on. We never look forward. We only look back. This approach is wild, but it works in both theory and practice. The theory is that this process is what naturally great readers do without even realizing it. They read a singular sentence and make 1,000 guesses on what its features do to support the purpose or to appeal to the audience. And as they read, they abandon the ideas that either lack evidence or conflict with the evidence, and they strengthen the strong suspicions into a genuine thesis about the text. Our approach is the tacit platform from which a traditional essay is built. One benefit of the approach is that by working out commentaries, like how great readers read, we will start naturally read like they do, which in turn will prove invaluable to our reading comprehension throughout the rest of our lives. And it'll make us more receptive to the traditional essay structure in the future. Another benefit of the approach is that producing commentaries like this lends itself so well to the time constraints of essays as presented by the AICE test, because time need not be spent rereading, categorizing and planning, or doubting. All of the time is spent digging into the text and producing work to receive points. I know it works in practice because I took the SAT 3 years ago and I scored a 22 out of 24 on the commentary while implementing this very strategy. I am so proud of this accomplishment because it supports the theory. I definitely did not deserve the perfect score because for a large part of the commentary, I was making educated inferences, some of which were eventually proven valid while others were completely unfounded. Additionally, I had no idea what I was reading for most of it, so I could not make nuanced text-to-text or text-to-world connections. But I could still get close enough to earn an exceptional score by proving to the graders that I could make quality comments. This is why I said earlier how we do not really need to justify a feature's effect correctly. We should obviously try to be correct, but within all rubrics is the prescription that students earn points for making the attempt. To elucidate my point, here are 3 essential quotes from the AICE mark schemes that the graders use. I will provide a quote and then contextualize. 1. Marks are awarded when candidates clearly demonstrate what they know and what they can do. This means that we have to give them stuff for them to reward us. Quote 2, marks are not deducted for errors. This means that in the quest of giving them stuff, they will never hurt our grades if they do not like our offered stuff. It just doesn't help us. This next one is long, but it is the most important one for our approach. 3. Credit is given for valid answers which go beyond the scope of the syllabus and mark scheme, referring to your team leader as appropriate. While we may have legitimate expectations as to the grounds most answers may occupy, we must at all times be prepared to meet candidates on their chosen grounds, provided it is relevant ground, for example, clearly related to and derived from the relevant passage or text, and meeting the mark scheme's requirement for the question. This means that even if the comment is not traditional and expected, which most of us would internalize as correct, we will still be rewarded if our comment is reasonable and believable. I've been at AICE trainings where this notion is heavily stressed. Students are often paralyzed by trying to be correct, so they reason for some reason that it is better to write nothing than to risk being wrong. Abandon that failure-focused mindset and try to create an internally consistent commentary. In the commentary, bravely chase consistent attempts because that will net a great score. Could I have scored a perfect score if I gave the correct answer by writing in a more traditional format after having read and understood the entire text? For sure. But that traditional format demands so much more skills in comprehension, synthesis, writing, time management that I could never teach students in a year. But within 1 month, I can teach this approach. I can teach something that would allow my students to access those benefits, 2 of which I will reiterate here for mine own posterity. Students will achieve success on the test. Furthermore, and more importantly, students' reading comprehension will be enhanced by fostering a healthy mindset of learning new analysis tools rather than dipping into their tried and true tool belt that's so comfortable but so limiting. So now, since I've just hit my 2,500 word requirement, let's finally create that product. We have a lot of screens, but don't be overwhelmed. On the right, we have the text that we will comment on. On the top left is the document in which the commentary will be formed. On the bottom left is the notes. These notes would not actually be present anywhere on test day. They are such important concepts or discoveries that they need to be at the front of our minds the entire time we read. To need them written out on scrap paper is to demote them to afterthoughts, which would be a disaster. I'm only typing them out because, unfortunately, you can't read my mind. I read the first blurb that is always present before the prompt and piece. This blurb contextualizes the piece, which is important because I don't know much about the text and I won't know much about the text for many minutes. In this blurb, I gather that the author is a teenage girl who has changed states. This information matters for 2 reasons. One reason is that it makes the pronoun use in my writing unambiguous. I, if I choose to include myself, am obviously I, me, my, mine, myself. The author is obviously she, her, hers, herself. The audience, by my choice, will be called readers. If it were a speech, I would say listeners, which will allow me to unambiguously use they, them, their, theirs, themselves. These distinctions allow me to churn out ideas clearly. The other reason is that I know to keep an eye out as I read the text for level 2 meanings. I make some guesses. Very possible are critiques of sexism in this new state or age-based discrimination in the state. I am suspicious of the need and presence of a level 2 meaning because the prompt doesn't really offer much else. Usually you're given a person whose name alone inspires an important lens for the text, or an event or place whose circumstances are to be incorporated, or a specific product whose nuances must be explored. This blurb is relatively empty, and I find it hard to believe that AICE would provide a text that is just some random kid simply narrating a day in a new state. But it could be. I also have to consider genre. The genre is a personal blog, which I interpret here as essentially a public diary. This helps me form, loosely, an audience, probably other youthful people or maybe groups affected by any possible critique she might make. Now, with some assumptions in mind, I can write. I start with the sentence, narration is a journey, not a destination. I do this in order to start front-loading a justification for the zany structure that is to come in our commentary. And I support this with my next sentence in order to make it almost insulting to think a commentary would be organized any other way. Recognizing this and desiring cohesion in her piece, the author develops, and then on my booklet, I do this. I leave 2 lines entirely blank. I will come back to this idea once my understanding of the text is firm and correct. Mentally, I do log a loose thesis, which I'm typing out just to bring you in on it. Understand, I have no idea if this thesis is true. I just need to be forming hypotheses, because that's what good readers do. With my 2 lines skipped, I indent and begin my first body paragraph. Though it is tempting to jump to the first sentence, I cannot overlook the heading or title. The title is a bolded date. I recognize that it is in the standard format for an American and that the presence of the title is indicative of the genre that it's in. I note these things, trying to concisely explain the interaction, including the audience's role. I kind of want to say something about the setting, but I'll save that until I gather more data. The next sentence is the fated first sentence. Argumentative pieces have first sentences that can hook the readers, and narratives have first sentences that can tease everything. The first sentence must be respected. Immediately, I love this structure, the balance of the descriptive words around those commas and the alliteration of the p sound, helping to separate the elements in contrast, which are the sky and the ocean. What I will first type is a layer 1 analysis. That setting is established. I am suspicious of that word flaming and its contrast with that word peaceful. It might be a hint at that discrimination I have sitting on the table as a hypothesis. I don't want to go all in, but I have to say something, so I'll be delicate. What I love about this edition is how vague it is. If I'm right, I'll be able to attach the future evidence back to this and say how the unpleasantness is quantified and advanced. If I'm wrong, I lose nothing. I move forward organically, engaging with the calm atmosphere that readers are currently experiencing. I quickly quote a verb that supports my statement that things are safe, and I move to address the peculiar present tense for this past activity. I'm going 1 sentence at a time, and I understand that the semicolons continue the sentence, just as, in this instance, a comma and an and would. This truth gives me the exciting freedom to read 3 clauses ahead. I notice a few simple things: the semicolons, alliteration, verbs, impactful agents, and a deliberately round image. I am confident that I can concisely and cohesively address each feature in that list, except alliteration. So I leave that feature alone. I have so much richness to discuss, and if alliteration happened this soon, I am sure it's going to come up later. We were interrupted in that take by the loudspeaker saying that I was going to get locked in, so we're in the whip in a parking lot. Don't worry, I'm not driving. Let's pick up where we left off. I could talk about the experience of readers as they read these clauses by stating the syntax mirrors as closely as possible the sensory experience she had. Since most people don't engage with the world with one sense at a time, I can incorporate an array of effects seamlessly with the same evidence and use cool analyzing words like respectively, which is always fun. I can comment on how the words fit thematically and conceptually to every single sense, with only licking a washed-up jellyfish left out, probably for good reason. I am satisfied with the effort from this sentence, so I continue to the next sentence. With this sentence, I see the cumulative sentences coming together to inspire a new memory. Another lexically related verb is used, but I'll get no points for using the same thing, so I leave it alone. I do find the included detail of mine to be odd and talk aboutable. It's odd because, well, duh, it's hers. That's what memories are. Owned experiences. By adding nearly tautological possession, the author creates something that isn't abstract neurons firing in a mind, but actually a quantifiable product to share. What's mine is ours. The intimacy of this shared memory is obviously something that she has desired building, and it started with the simple present verb and the first-person pronouns. I'll take a moment to reflect on the personal blog genre and how this author is trying to bond with me. I find author-centered texts to be unbelievably parasocial and slimy. Parasocial means the one-sided relationship that develop often online, wherein a popular person exists, oblivious to the lives of the individuals who support that person. Yet, those individuals live with the false pretense that they matter as individuals to the popular person. Why does this matter? Because this is how people are persuaded or engaged in all of the media that is consumed. It's why TV shows with friend groups are so popular. It's why every single Twitch streamer feels the need to overlay his face while he plays video games, as if his form has any relevance to the gameplay or content. It's why all recipes start with a narrative of some great-grandma's ceremonial passing of the recipe Rolodex. Authors profit if strangers are manipulated into family. During my reading of the next sentence, I noticed that I am both in a new sentence and that sentence is an entire paragraph. I know I need to comment on this interesting structure, so I waste no time in discussing the shift. Examples like this demonstrate how genuinely effective a chronological structure is beyond gaming a test. It's so relevant to include these details, especially in this structure. In the next sentence, I see a verb in the past tense, which makes intuitive sense within her grander choice of tense. But I want to look back at the previous sentence because I noticed something before that didn't feel as profound as it does now. I see something that is super high level and probably unintentional from her, but I'm going to make the claim anyway. Some verbs are irregular in that they deviate from the standard ed endings. Let is a verb that has identical forms in the past and present, and it's contenative, which means sync is not actually functioning to express tense, and it shouldn't be confused too. This knowledge allows me to comment on a sentence's Wayne's World's fade effect, which could, and definitely would, impress my graders. Thanks for hanging out with me in the car.